Welcome to my next video. In this video, I'm going to get back to translating from the passage that we started a bit ago in chapter 6 of the Gospel of John. We started in verse 25, and I'm continuing now with verse 31 and hopefully 32, if there's enough time. So before I get started, just a quick little aside. If you hear some kind of odd background noise, it's the wind. There's a very strong wind here in the desert southwest that is periodically rattling my camper. I don't know how loud it's going to be, but it sounds loud to me. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say is, as you go through these videos or read your own Greek text, I just want to encourage you to pause the video or just take some time to read the passages aloud yourself to get a feel for the language. Okay, so here we go. We're starting with verse 31 of the 6th chapter of John. I pateresimon tomana έφαγον εν ti έρημο, καθώς εστίν γεγραμμένον. So for this verse, the modern Greek is quite similar to the Koine, so I'm just going to read that and put that up here as well as we go through this verse. So here's the modern Greek. I pateres mas έφαγον tomana μέσα στην έρημο, όπως είναι γραμμένο. Alright, now continuing on, same verse, but back to Koine. Άρτον εκ του ουρανού έδωκεν αυτής φαγείν. And then the modern Greek for that portion. Άρτον από τον ουρανό έδωσε σαυτούς να φάνε. So now I'm going to start the word-by-word translation of the Koine text, and I will talk about modern Greek when it makes sense, the words in modern Greek, not all the time, but just when it seems appropriate. So the first words are I pateres, which means fathers. It is the plural of o patir in Koine. The plural here is the same for Koine and modern Greek. The singular is not, but the plural is. The next word, imon, we've seen before. It's the genitive form of the pronoun we. And in Koine, this pronoun we is imis. And in modern Greek, the pronoun we is emis, which you see are very similar. Now the genitive forms don't look a lot alike. I won't go into that here, but I just wanted you to see that the actual nominative form of the pronoun is very, very similar. The genitive, as we just saw in Koine, is imon, and in modern is mas. The next word here is έφαγον, which means they ate, and the present tense form of the verb in Koine is εσθίω, and it has the closed stem fag. So the aorist for the third person plural they is έφαγον, which has the vowel augment at the beginning and then the ending on. This is another verb where the open and the closed stems that you see in εσθίω and έφαγον are quite different. And if you look at the modern Greek here, you can see that this aorist, or closed past tense, is almost exactly the same as Koine. It's έφαγον. And the difference here in the ending is because, as I mentioned earlier, there are two sets of aorist endings in Koine, but those two merged into one in modern, and this on ending in modern Greek is just from the other set of aorist endings. Now, the modern Greek form of the present tense verb here is not esthío. It's a pretty totally different verb. It's tro, which means I eat in modern Greek. And this verb, tro, interestingly, also, it does come from ancient Greek, and it means, so in ancient Greek it was tro or trogo, which means I gnaw, munch, or I eat audibly, I chew. And in Koine, actually, trogo was replacing esthío in ordinary use, but in the Gospel here, we see, at least the lexicon I looked at showed esthío as the present tense form of the verb έφαγον. But you see they're exactly the same, pretty much exactly the same in the aorist tense, the modern Greek and the Koine are. The next word is en, which means in, and then we have ti érimo, and that is the dative form of έρημος, which means the desert or wilderness. It's the same word in modern Greek, έρημος, for desert or wilderness, but the modern Greek translation uses the accusative form of this noun, as there is no dative in modern Greek. The next word is kathos, which means as or just as, and then estin, which means it is. Γεγραμμένον is the perfect passive participle of the verb grapho, which means I write, in Koine and also in modern. So when you look at γεγραμμένον compared to grapho, the two things to focus here on are the little ye at the beginning and then menon on the end. And what you have there in the middle, the gram, is the kind of root. In Koine, to form the perfect tense of a verb, one thing you do is to reduplicate the initial consonant at the beginning and then put it at the beginning of the word, followed by epsilon. So here the initial consonant is a gamma, so that would be ye at the beginning of the verb in the perfect. So the perfect passive of grapho is γεγραμμέ. The ame ending shows that it's passive, and then to get the to go from perfect passive to participle, we've seen this before. You take off the ame and add amenos for the masculine form. Here we have the neuter. I'll get to that in a second, but that would be masculine. So we've seen another passive participle in an earlier video, and that passive participle was erchomenon, from the verb erchome, which means I come, and erchomenon means coming. It's just a little different there at the end. I'm sure you can see the similarities, but it's a little different because erchome ends in ome instead of ame. The fact that this is a perfect passive participle affects the meaning by giving it a meaning of a bounded action in the past, but that's an action that's abiding. The effect is abiding, so that even though it's been completed in the past, its effects are still felt. Before we move on, I will just read that bit that we translated and give the translation all together. So, it was I pateres imon tomana έφαγον εν ti έρημο kathos estin iegramenon, and that means our fathers ate manna in the wilderness, just as it is written. And then verse 31 continues with what is written in the scriptures. So the first word here is άρτον. Άρτον is the accusative form of the word άρτος, which means bread. It's o άρτος, it's masculine, and it's the accusative form since it is the object of the verb here, which is έδωκεν, which means he gave. And we'll get to that in just a second. Ek means from. Tu, so we have tu uranu. So tu is the article here. It's the genitive form of the article o, masculine. And uranu is the genitive of the noun o uranos, which means sky or heaven. So we've seen this before, u being the genitive form of the ending for masculine nouns. And then we have έδωκεν. Έδωκεν, which means he gave, is the aorist third person singular form of the verb δίδωμι in Koine. So the closed root here, δόκ, is very similar to the closed root δος in modern Greek, which is why the aorist form of this verb for the third person singular, έδωκεν in Koine and έδωσε in modern Greek, is why they are so similar. The present form of the verb in modern Greek is dino, and as we just saw, it has the closed stem form of the verb δώσω. And then the last point of comparison between Koine and modern Greek is that the ending there in Koine is n, but in modern Greek is e. And actually in Koine it's n just if the following word starts with a vowel. If it starts with a consonant, the ending there is e, also in Koine. The next word, αυτοῖς, in Koine means to them. It's the dative plural form of the pronoun αυτός, which we've seen before, both αυτός and the dative plural. And as I said before, modern Greek doesn't have a dative case, so the difference here is that the modern Greek is actually two words. So we have se αυτούς, which means to them, with αυτούς here being in the accusative. And you need that se, which gets shortened to sigma apostrophe, which means to. So σαυτούς means to them in the accusative in the modern. The next word is φαγείν, which means to eat. It's the aorist or closed infinitive of a verb which we just saw, εσθίω, which means I eat. We saw εσθίω with the aorist verb έφαγον, and in έφαγον you can just see that aorist root, fag, and that's the same aorist root we see here in the infinitive. So to get the infinitive, you take that aorist root fag, and then you add in, which is the second aorist infinitive ending. So the pronunciation's a little different because in έφαγον, it's a hard gamma because it's followed by omicron. But in fagείν, it's soft gamma, kind of like a Y sound in English. The modern Greek equivalent for the infinitive is naphane, and in modern Greek, the closed root for this verb is fa, not fag, so that's why you have naphane. As I talked about in an earlier video, both the infinitive and the subjunctive in modern Greek are formed by na plus a form of the verb, either an open or a closed form of the verb. So this last portion that we just translated is άρτον εκ του ουρανού έδωκεν αυτοῖς φαγείν, which means bread from heaven he gave to them to eat, or more smoothly, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Verse 32, είπεν ουν αυτοῖς ο Ιησούς, αμήν αμήν λέγω ημίν, ου Μωυσής δέδωκεν ημίν τον άρτον εκ του ουρανού, αλ ο πατήρ μου δίδωσιν ημίν τον άρτον εκ του ουρανού τον αληθινόν. The first two phrases of this verse we've seen before, so I can just go over those quickly. The first is είπεν ουν αυτοῖς ο Ιησούς, which means he said therefore to them, Jesus, and the subject here is Jesus, so o Iisus, Jesus, είπεν, he said, ουν, therefore, αυτοῖς, to them, dative. He said this, he said, αμήν αμήν λέγω ημίν, and we've pretty much seen this before too. Αμήν meaning truly, λέγω, I say, ημίν, to you all, the dative form of you, plural. U means not, it's just a little negating particle. Moises, Moses. The next word, δέδωκεν, means he has given. We just saw the verb έδωκεν, very similar, which means he gave, and is the aorist form of the present verb δίδομι, I give. So here we have the same closed root, δοκ. Some verbs get that closed root by adding a kappa, not a sigma, to the open stem. And we also have reduplication of the initial consonant followed by epsilon, which shows us that this is perfect. So it's translated, he has given, the N ending there, third person singular, he. So we have Moses has not given, because that little oo back there, remember? And then the next word, ημίν, which means to you, plural, the dative of you, plural. And then we have the same phrase that we had before, ton άρτον εκ του ουρανού, which means bread, accusative, from out of heaven. And the next word, al, is just the shortened form of Allah, which means but. O patir mu, my father, so o patir, father, mu, my. And then we have δίδωσιν, which means he gives. It's the third person singular, he of δίδομι, That's the present tense of the verb. Imin again, which means to you, plural. And that's the dative form of you, plural. And then we have this same phrase, which we've seen a couple times now. Ton arton ek tu uranu. The bread, accusative from out of heaven. And then the last words, ton alithnon. Alithnon means true. It's an adjective. And here it's in the accusative case because it's modifying artos, which is here in the accusative case. So it's the accusative form of the masculine adjective alithinos, because artos is masculine. And here also alithinon is preceded by the article ton, also in the accusative, which means the, which in English is kind of weird. I talked about this before. So we don't say, the bread, the true. But Greek, Koine Greek, had two ways of placing that adjective to modify the noun. And the first would be more similar to what we do in English. So that would be the article, then followed by the adjective, followed by the noun. So in this case, it would be ton alithnon arton. And then the second way is to have the adjective after the noun, and you put the article twice, once before the noun and once before the adjective, and that is what we see here. When the definite article is used twice, the adjective always comes after the noun. You won't see article, adjective, article, noun. You just see the article, noun, article, adjective. So like here, the bread, the true. And also, in this case, there's just a little bit more in that phrase. It's the bread from out of heaven, the true. So in conclusion here, I will read verse 32 in its entirety and translate it. Ipen un aftis o Iisus, amin amin lego imin, u Moisis dedoken imin ton arton ek tu uranu, al opatirmu didωσιν imin ton άρτον εκ του ουρανού ton αληθινόν. And the translation. Jesus said, therefore, to them, truly, truly, I say to you, Moses has not given you bread out of heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread out of heaven. So I noticed some translations, English translations, have it is not Moses who has given, instead of Moses has not given you. So the "u" here is negating Moses. That's a finer point I really can't speak to. Same general idea though. And then the other thing that I referred to earlier, Allah becoming al apostrophe, because there's that vowel that follows, so it's just a little harder to say Allah o. It gets condensed into al o, very much like with us in English when we say, for example, he's instead of he is. That is the end of this video. Thank you again for watching, and I will continue translating with the next video.